I'm Nisha Zachary, and this is the Zig Zag Leap, brought to you by Permission to Leap. For years, I've been talking to people about having permission to take a leap of faith. We all know that life doesn't happen in a straight line, so how do you overcome your past and possibly current circumstances to live the life you were created for? Stick around to hear our guest answers that will lend you some courage to give yourself permission to leap, no matter how twisted the path may be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Zig Zag Leap. I'm Nisha Zachary, and today I am talking to Gina Rowlkowski. She is a trauma coach who has been through so many things that most people don't want to talk about. Drawing on her 18 years in recovery from childhood sexual abuse, drug addiction, seizures, and suicide attempts, coupled with her years of teaching experience and leading workshops on social emotional learning, Gina helps abuse survivors overcome the life-altering impacts of abuse and discover hope and joy by teaching them how to nurture a relationship with God and with themselves. Gina helps her clients feel safe, seen, and supported while teaching them how to overcome shame, fear, and anxiety and build a peaceful, playful, and purposeful life using the 5 keys on her Bridge to Breakthrough program. Gina is a wife, a mother of 1 grown daughter, and passionate about serving others and the power of God's unconditional love. Thank you so much for joining me, Gina.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Nisha.
So, how did you get to the point of wanting to become a trauma coach?
Well, it's interesting because I never really sat down and went, oh, I want to be a trauma coach.
Right.
I always had this weird thing about life coaches and was like, oh, they're just weird. But it's just amazing how God puts us in our place, right? But it was, having the years and years of experience that I have, plus, my experience as a teacher in education and my own recovery, I felt honestly like I had to be, that this is what God was calling me to do. And the more that I just kind of poo-pooed it, the more it just kept showing up. So I actually hired a business coach to help me with a different business that I had, that I was doing. And she was, and I really wanted a Christian coach because it's a really big part of my life is my relationship with God. And she was like, no, this isn't, and really helped me kind of dive into what God really was calling me to do. And one morning when I was doing my journaling, I just felt like God was just write this down. And I got the outline of my program in 20 minutes. And so I thought, well, okay, there's a lot of imposter syndrome and stuff like that. You think can I really help people?
Right.
But the more I've stepped out, the more I realized, that I do have a lot to offer, and that, having been through it myself really makes a big difference in working with clients, because they really know that I know how they feel. And that's one of the biggest things that, abuse survivors really, really long for, is someone who really gets it, because there's so much stuff about being an abuse survivor that is not your average experience, that unless you've been through it, you really don't get it.
Yeah, that's so true. Going back, you were talking about your experience. For those who don't know, what is social emotional learning, and how did you use that in teaching?
Sure. Well, social emotional learning is basically teaching children life skills, so to speak, like self-regulation, sharing, connection, and it's, when I was a teacher, I remember thinking, my gosh, how am I going to deal with 20 kids in a classroom?
Right.
I have what in God's green earth, this is and when I was in graduate school, I started, I came across this book called Conscious Discipline by Dr. Becky Bailey. And I was just in awe of her whole program. And I paid my way to go through a lot of her institutes and workshops and 5 days and intensives and stuff. And so I got to I used all of that with my students. And I worked in Title I schools. So my kids were all low income, homeless, some of them, very, very poor, and, attachment issues and all sorts of things. But all of the things that I learned in there, really, really helped in my own healing journey of, overcoming trauma and really understanding how to connect with myself and attachment and all that kind of stuff. But social emotional learning is basically activities that will teach kids self-regulation. So how do I handle it when I get upset? Where do I feel it in my body? What can I do differently? It's disciplining children, not punishing them for not knowing what to do. But it's a very powerful program. And it's something that you hear a lot about reparenting in the world out there when it comes to trauma and complex trauma and recovery. And it's basically, social emotional learning is basically reparenting in a strange way, but like parenting in a helpful way that's going to help mind, body, and spirit.
Definitely. So I was doing my yoga teacher training, and it was a social emotional learning training. So it was specifically for educators to be able to take the principles of yoga into the classroom.
Oh, wow.
And doing trauma-informed yoga with the children in the classroom, I have seen tremendous differences. Now, I'm not but my kids do attend a Title I school, and I do go in there and volunteer.
Right.
Being able to give them tools to cope with, I'm just like, I wish that somebody would give me these tools.
I know. And it's funny. I think that, like, over the years, so much of what I learned, so much of what I needed to teach them actually helped me learn for myself, and it was really, it's funny because we don't teach our children, and nobody teaches us. We can't teach what we don't know, but it really is so incredibly powerful and self-regulation is like the number one predictor of success in children. So when we think about, they have a great IQ, but if they can't get along with others and they can't manage their emotions and they're no self-control, what good are they? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it was really, really helpful for me to have to really learn about the brain and all that kind of stuff and help the kids. And it was like, oh, this really works. I remember kids saying to me in school when I was teaching that, Ms. Rowlkowski, I think you need to breathe.
That's the bad part when it comes back to you. And
I know. I was like, you know what, you guys, I think you're right. Let's all stop and do our breathing. So, but it's nice to know that they could see it. And I sure hope that some of them out there are still using it.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for your previous work and your current work, changing the future, restoring the past, like the two worlds coming together all in what you're doing. I think that's
it's ironic. It really is.
Oh, man. Okay, so have you taken more than one leap of faith? Because obviously you took a leap when you left education to do this. I have a feeling there have been others.
Yeah, I think, gosh, I think my life has been a whole bunch of leaps. You know what I mean? I should be a kangaroo or something. I don't know. It's like, here I go, bing, bing, bing. But, I think probably one of the first leaps I ever took was, when I decided to go inpatient and work and get off of the drugs that I was on, and this was 18 years ago, but I really didn't know I had no idea how my life was going to be different in any way, shape, or form. All I knew at the time was just that I couldn't live any longer the way I was, and it was, I had tried to kill myself. Obviously that didn't work. I didn't really, I just wanted to not be so incredibly paralyzed in pain and feel like a loser and think I was crazy. And I had no idea how that was going to change. I look back and I think, how will this ever get better? But I decided to take that leap. And, I'm really grateful that I did, because I don't think I would truly know who I am and, know my truth and be able to feel connected and safe, regardless of circumstances, without having taken that leap, and thinking like, can I live without these drugs? And, because the biggest leap, I think, for me was that, somehow I was going to go into therapy or go into, these treatments, and somebody was going to say to me, you're just a crazy person. Like, you really need to accept the fact that you're just a big fat loser and you're just not going to amount to anything, which is what my ex-husband used to tell me, and just, hide away. And of course that never happened, thank God.
Right.
But that was probably, one of the biggest leaps. I think that was one of the first leaps that I took in my life. There's been many more. Going out with my husband, I didn't want to go out with him. I didn't like his picture at all. And my therapist at the time told me, if you want to like stop having these abusive behavior patterns with relationships, you're going to have to go out with somebody that you normally wouldn't be attracted to. And I was like, oh, that's just horrible. And so I had gone on so many dates like for 2 years, and I finally was like, I'm not going to get married. I'm going to have cats and stay at home and just be an old lady with my cats. And my husband came through on Match.com and it contacted me and I was like, oh God, like no, like just no. And I even lied and I said, no, I'm actually seeing somebody. But here we are, like 14 years later, you know, happily married. And I literally only went out with him because I wanted to be able to say to my therapist, fine, I went out with somebody. See, I told you it wasn't going to work. So, and I was scared to death for like the first 6 weeks that we would date. I really liked him like right away. And I was so nervous that I would like shake sometimes when I was with him. So, you know, I think there's obviously, you know, without leaps, you don't fly, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think that there's been lots of different chances that I've taken in my life. And I've always ended up grateful that I did, or at least learning from what I may not have worked out the way I wanted to, but that's kind of how it goes.
I like that you're able to reframe it. Even if you don't get what you want, you've learned something, so you can pack that in your bag and take it with you next time.
Yeah, you know, I think that's the thing is like we have this tendency to think like every leap is going to like be this great thing. And I've had a lot of leaps that I've taken that didn't work out the way I wanted to, but I was still okay in the end. You know what I mean? Like it didn't change who I am. It doesn't take away my worth. It's just like, you know, part of the leap, I think too, is learning how to deal with the disappointment if it doesn't work out the way you want. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot to be said for being able to compassionately say, wow, that's a real bummer, man. Like that didn't work out the way I hoped, but you know what? I'm still okay. And I can bounce back, you know?
I think that is one of the absolute hardest things, is because you've been in situations before where the disappointment, like physically, mentally, emotionally hurt.
Yeah.
And if it's a disappointment from something that you tried and it didn't work out, it may feel like trigger a reminder of
Oh,
the past
yes.
thing,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that the past thing is happening again. So you got to
Right.
be able to separate the two.
Well, that's the tricky thing about triggers is, you know, I think, you know, early on when I learned about triggers, I tend to be very excuse happy. I don't know if that's the right word, but it became like, and I didn't really want it to be that way, but it was all that like I knew, you know, because for many years, like, you know, I was ignored, I was invisible, I was unloved, you know, horrible. So the minute anything can happen that's like legitimate, so to speak, it was like, oh, now, you know, pay attention, somebody see me, you know, and learning that that the triggers, you know, are really my responsibility to learn how to manage, and that they can significantly decrease in intensity and frequency was really a sense of freedom. Because yeah, like everybody gets triggered, but like you said, you know, that was then, this is now, you know, I can handle this, you know, and there are many times when I had to learn how to work through moments like that. Like, you know, this is my husband, it's not my father, you know, I am safe. I can feel my feet on the floor. I can feel my feet on the ground. You know, and really being able to give myself what I need and know that I'm loved and cared for without having to like make, you know, have this, you know, experience become more than, you know, I want it to be. But I think it's really important for all of us who get triggered, because everybody does, to learn, you know, how to manage them internally so that we can give ourselves what we need instead of being constantly disappointed or paralyzed by pain that people outside of us don't recognize that.
Right. And I think that goes to the concept of, you know, giving yourself permission. So what is your definition of permission?
Gosh, that's a really good question. That's a thought-provoking one. I mean, I think it probably goes back to somewhat of the like reparenting type thing, you know, but you know, I think it's important to give yourself, you know, permission. I think means to notice what you need. Maybe when I think about it, you know, what do I need? You know, I don't. if I need something, now mind you, if I think I need something and I'm going to go rob a store or somebody at gunpoint, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it's certainly within reason. You know, if I really need to be loved and cared for, how can I get that need met? And is the situation I'm in going to meet that need or not? And if not, then I give myself permission to leave or make a boundary or say no. You know, I think that it's the other thing is, I think when it comes for permission, it is our body's way of kind of going, you know, you over here, like this is a no, you know, time out, like, and it gets, the anxiety gets bigger and bigger. And maybe all we need in the moment is literally to just stop and say, wow, I notice I'm really feeling anxious. Or even, and the other thing is, like, when I use my name and I talk to myself and go, whoa, gee, hey, listen, I see you, girl. It's okay. Like, it's okay. You know,
I love that.
Okay. You know, like, I was rushing around trying to get dressed because I was at Bible study today. I came home late and I was like, oh, I got to put, and I was like, oh my God, I'm really anxious. I said, whoa. It's going to be okay. You're going to find something. You look great. It's going to be, I see that you're freaking out, but it's okay. You know, like, all of a sudden, like, it's gone. But if I had just been like, oh, but I think permission is really paying attention to, what do I need and how can I best get that for myself, regardless of what somebody else thinks about it.
Wow. That's wow. That's wonderful. Yeah, because I think that's the thing that stops us most of the time. It's like, okay, what is everybody else going to think? Now,
Right.
can I give myself permission? And you just like flip that whole thing around. It's like, okay, I'm going to give myself permission, and then everybody else is going to have to figure it out.
Well, and I'll tell you something. The thing is, it's like, one of the things I've learned, Nisha, is that over the years is that people will adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, you know, bye-bye, you know what I mean?
Yes.
God bless you. Don't, you know, see you later. But, you know, like, early on with my father, I had to make a lot of, like, I mean, I really had to, like, leave him at restaurants a couple times when I was like, if you're going to talk about these things, I'm leaving. And listen, to anybody out there listening, and even to my own self right now, there are times when that is just not easy to do. Like, nobody's saying, I gave myself permission, I put it together and I did it and it is great. You know what I mean? Because you're literally going, oh my God, I'm a horrible daughter. I feel awful. But like, when I finally it was like, I am going to leave if you keep talking about this. And I'm shaking, but I got in my car, I started crying. But I was proud of myself because I was like, I don't have to put up with this. And I think I probably only did that like 3 times or 4 times. And finally, he never brought any of these things up. You know, we didn't talk about this thing. I said, you're going to, Daddy, if you're going to do that, I'm leaving. All right, G, it's okay. Let's talk about something else. But I think people will start to really honor the boundaries because they start respecting you as well, which, you know, it doesn't even matter if they do, because it's about us respecting ourselves. But I don't want to dismiss the fact that this is not an easy thing to do, especially at first, because I still struggle with those, you know, with those things. The good thing is that the intensity and frequency disappears, but it's still a bit of a challenge. But the more you do it, the more you're like, wow.
Wow,
I go. I don't have to feel horrible if I don't want to, you know.
Right. And I think, like, just from my own experience, it's a condition to feel horrible. Like, you've been trained all your life to ask for permission from school, from your parents, from, you know, every adult figure around you. So that
I never thought about it like that. It's true.
right. And when you grow up, it's like, okay, now who do I ask? Oh, wait, I have to ask me?
I know. That's a really, that's a good point. Like, well, like, where's my, it's almost a funky, like, it's odd because I think about that sometimes, like, when I think about reparenting and I think about, you know, eating whatever I want or like working out, you know, and it's like, oh man, like, you know, I almost wish I had a like part-time person who I could trust to be nice to me, to go, gee, come on, you know. But it's like, who do you go to? It has to be me, you know.
It does. It does. As a mother, going through your past experiences and you've, you know, gotten yourself together and you know how to do the things for yourself. How do you train your daughter to be able to give herself permission?
Right. I mean, I would say the best answer to that is just modeling what you want her to do. And if you don't know what that is, learn, you know, and I think, you know, it's children learn by watching. like it or not. I mean, how many times have you opened your mouth and heard your mother come out,
Oh yeah.
right? And when you were little, you were like, I'm never going to say that to my kids, right? Or right, and it's like, but that's like saying, I'm never going to write with my right hand if that's how you learned. That's what so you have to give yourself something new, and that's why I think, especially when it comes to young children, it's really, really, it's going to make such a big difference in their lives in general, and in your life as a parent, and in their future, to really learn some sort of social, emotional, brain-based discipline of sorts, so that they know how to manage. That's like, I used to have the safe place in my classroom, and my kids knew, when you're upset, this is what you do. And always, the eye contact, touch, connection, safe connection, and stuff like that. But I think the best way to do that is to model that for your children. And if you don't know how, then go get some help to do that, and take them with you. Go, mommy's going to learn how to like be the best mommy she can. And, and you'll in turn learn, how you can do that for yourself. But
Yeah.
nobody knows how if they don't get help. You know what I mean? Like nobody, we're not, like it or not, most parents don't come with a social emotional handbook that they take out and use.
No. One thing, like, kids don't come with instruction manuals.
No, I don't know how I would ever have been as successful as I was teaching, managing my classroom, especially with the difficult children I had, if I didn't have the training that I did. Because I mean, I could even hear in other rooms where it was like, okay, and the other thing is, if something is working, but if it's making a difference, if it's improving, or something's changing. If it's not, then for God's sake, do something else. Find something else to do and do it.
Yeah, and that's a thing that I've noticed in the classroom is, so at my kids' school, most of the teachers, they go through the teacher development, and they have like social emotional people that come in and teach them. So they work, on this level. But there are, some new teachers that come in and they haven't gotten all the programming straight. And it's like, the way you're talking to these kids, that's what they hear at home. So you're just giving them what they already know. So they're going to respond how they always do.
It's not, well, yeah, I mean, and they don't, like, children up until 8 years old, children don't have the ability for internal language. So they don't go, oh no, that's what I do at home. I sometimes say that. Like they don't do that.
Right.
And adults talk to children like they're just little adults, and they're not. They're just not, and I hear parents say things like all the time, I told you not to do that, or, stop this. And it's like, you have to tell your child, especially at young age, what they can do. Don't tell them, stop touching that. Say, you may touch it like this. You may keep your hands in your pocket. You can fold your hands like this, but stop it. And I don't, better. Well, they don't know what to do. They only know you said, stop doing this. Well, what else can I do with this energy, or whatever it is, so it's really important, and it does take, and it's a shame, because most adults are going to talk to children the way they talk to themselves. And that includes teachers.
Wow. That's a hard lesson to swallow.
Yeah, it is. It's and the good thing is, when you're a parent, if your kids are getting that in the classroom, they know what they can get, safely at home. But it's it's definitely a challenge, having been a teacher and seeing the way, I mean, you're just like, and knowing that it doesn't have to be that way was always the hard part for me. And even when I see parents in stores, or I hear about my daughter's friends' kids, and, and I think, if you could get help, it would be so much easier for you and for them.
It would be. That should be like, they give you Lamaze classes. They should give you like social emotional learning.
I know. And they really, yeah, well, your kids are lucky they have you, because at least you know what that is, and obviously you care enough to figure it out.
Oh, definitely.
Because most just, they don't know.
Yeah. It's a rough road. Okay, so what is your definition of taking a leap?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. What is my definition of taking a leap? I think taking a leap is like taking a risk. It's like going for something, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. Like, I think we have these ideas of like, leaps being, I leave my job and I start a startup in my garage, and 10 years later I'm like a millionaire on my own island. And it's like, no, how many leaps really, like, what is a leap? I think you have to decide, well, what is a leap? And I would say it's a risk. It's something that is not comfortable at first, that might be beneficial for you later. Like for me, since I've moved here, after living in Florida for so long, other than my identical twin sister and a few little, few friends, like I don't really have a group or church or whatever. And so like I considered it taking a leap to, join this Bible study I started going to. It's not easy to like drive a half hour away and go somewhere where you don't really know anybody. And, you hope it's a risk, people could be like, what are you doing here, and get out, or, or it could be, be the greatest thing of whatever. But like, I think it's really doing anything that involves some level of risk, but is, hopefully the goal is a long-term, benefit from whatever the objective is of going. For me, making friends, learning more about God, connecting friends with my faith, blah, blah, blah. If it doesn't work out there, maybe it'll be somebody else. But I would say that's my answer about taking a leap.
So when you've taken all of these leaps, like, is there a certain way that you think of success? Like, I don't know if you have like a linear thought process.
No, that's a really good question. I'll tell you something, honestly, Nisha. Success for me before was, a certain amount of money in the bank account, certain car, certain clothes, certain home, certain job, blah, blah, blah. And, when I really was struggling with flashbacks and things like that, obviously those things were not going to be a possibility for me because I wasn't really functioning very well. Right. And so if one of the things I learned, and I think this is part of the reason why God really took a lot of the things that I had decided were going to be my definition of success, like it or not, that was unconsciously what I was doing.
Right.
When those things were taken, I couldn't work anymore. We moved and I was laid off, and, I was having flashbacks. And so, my therapist was like,
Hold on, you went out for a second. You said your therapist said,
she told me, you're not working anymore. Like, you're not, because I kept going, oh, you keep it. She was like, you need to stop and work and work on healing your pain, because I had started having flashbacks of being sexually abused growing up when I was like in my 40s. So, and I was, it's very hard to like function in the world when you're having flashbacks. Your body is full of anxiety and trauma and fear, so I kept pushing through that. But when I couldn't do that anymore, I felt like a big fat failure. I was like, it was so incredibly devastating, I would say, even to the very like core of my soul, because I felt like my biggest fear of being just a loser, a crazy loser who couldn't do anything, was like, that was coming true. Like, that was the truth of it. And one of the things I realized was the more time I spent with God during that time period, the more I realized that my success is really about discovering my worth. And my worth is not determined by what happened to me, what's in my bank account, what kind of car I drive, what kind of job I have. And I've really had a chance to finally experience myself as worthy and successful in what I believe. And I think many, successful people even would say is really the definition of success, but becoming at peace and knowing who I truly am, and that who I truly am can't ever be determined by anything other than what God says about me.
Right.
And that's why I have all, those verses from the Bible. And these are actually Bible verses that I have, that they were advertised on Etsy for like a girl's nursery. And I was just like, this is the stuff that needs to be in like every woman's room practically, because if it's not in our nursery as a child or young adult, you don't know this, but she is clothed in strength and dignity, with strength and dignity. She is fearfully and wonderfully made, and those are the things that I learned. And for me, success really means being able to know who I truly am, and know that can't ever be taken from me. Being safe and loved and peaceful in spite of the situation, is it really big accomplishment? Because then
It is.
no matter what, I can't seek that outside myself ever again.
Wow. Okay. You said a lot right there. But one of the things that I heard you say was, you have this desire to fulfill certain things. And so you're motivated to come out of the spot that you're in, out of the
Right,
the things that are the flashbacks that you're having, the things that
right,
are
right,
going on internally. Then there's something on your website that says, I know what it's like to be motivated to get better, yet struggle to feel stuck, not being able to get the right kind of help.
right,
So how do you get past? I mean, I know like you've got the 5 keys.
right,
So, people can go and, download that. They can schedule a call with you.
right.
But what can they do? Like if they're having a moment, like what's just one thing? Like my thing is, repeating, like you said, the Bible verses, the
Right,
affirmations. But
right,
is
right.
there something that you would suggest?
I mean, I would say with the first thing that, especially if you're having a moment, when by moment, I mean, you're feeling activated,
Mm-hmm.
maybe your anxiety, but, the idea that your nervous system is activated. So you're feeling unsafe, right? One of the most important things I have learned on my journey, and it has been really, really, I don't know if you ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, but you'll hear me talk about that all the time. But it's somewhat like the Bible of like healing chronic complex PTSD from like childhood trauma.
Oh, wow.
But when you can get back into your body and regulate your nervous system, you're automatically changing the state of you are with the brain state that you're in. So one of the things that I have learned is to stop and just describe, okay. One of the things that I say is sense, say, settle. So sense. So, like even like earlier when I was rushing around, I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop. I'm going to sense. And I noticed my heart's racing, or, you may notice, but it's really important to start noticing what's going on in your body. Oh, you know what? I actually noticed my jaw is clenched, or my teeth are clenched, or, oh, you know what? My wrists are, but, or I feel tingling in my shoulders. But you'll really, once you can get really back into your body and just focus on that, you're actually calming your nervous system. So sense, like I said, what's going on in your body, and say, oh, I'm feeling really anxious, or I'm feeling upset, or I'm feeling whatever, right? And you can be feeling more than one thing at once, right? And then settle. There's things that you can do to settle and soothe yourself. Like me, I just literally started talking. I took out my inner reparenting and said, whoa, hey, dude, I see you got this anxiety going on here. It's okay. It's going to be all right. Like, it's good. Like, you got this. I'm seeing you. You
Right.
can handle this. You might not have it turn out exactly the way you want, but you're going to be okay. Right. Or, there are other things you can do. The 5 things that you see, 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you can smell, taste, etc. But, rather than having this, the other thing that really drives me nuts about mindset stuff out there is that there's so much mindset stuff out there that makes it sound like you should literally be able to change your thought, change your life.
Mm-hmm.
That is not true when it comes to trauma. It's just not true. It's not the way the body works. It just doesn't. And it's just such a misconception, because then you start feeling like, oh, I guess I'm just not trying hard enough. I changed my thoughts. I don't feel any better. Now I'm a horrible person. I don't, whatever. But I think the most important thing is learning to really get back in touch with your feelings, how they're manifesting in your body. And the more that you can do that, the quicker the anxiety, the upset, whatever, is going to diminish. And the less often you're going to have these highs, or lows.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
It's a great book. If you haven't read it, it's like Bessel, Bessel, Van, Vander, Vander Kolk, I think Kolk. But you can find his stuff even, he's like the Jesus of the trauma world, so to speak. I don't know how to say it, but
no, I got you. It makes sense.
Sorry, Lord, I didn't, anyway.
No, but I think the thing about flashbacks is that they come suddenly and unexpectedly. It's not something that you plan
Oh,
for.
I know, no, I know.
Like
Nobody
I was
sits there and goes,
upstairs,
I think I'll have a flashback.
right? And I
Yeah,
was
it's
think
shocking.
I was upstairs thinking earlier, and I was like, there are some times when God, you walk around, you have your raincoat, you have your umbrella, you've got your rain boots. Like God, you can bring anything. I got.
Right, I got it. Yeah.
And then there's sometimes where you walk out the door, it's sunny, and you turn the corner and the rain starts pouring. And it's like, hey, I have no way of protecting myself.
Nothing like that. Right.
And I think that's how flashbacks are. Like there are things now, like at 42, like you were saying,
Right.
like there are chunks of my childhood and teenage years that have been missing for years, and
Oh, right.
I have been okay with that. Like we did not.
Oh yeah, I don't remember years and years. Yeah, like you went to school, you know who your parents were and all. It's not like you would like don't have any memories, but you can't remember something specific, and that's very common. And that's another part of the body keeps the score. I mean, the body is protecting. I think that's the way God made it, because it's so awful that we would not be able to function if we had those those memories. It would be
Right.
too, it's just the body's way of going, you don't need to remember that. You won't function with that. I think the tricky thing about flashbacks, like you said, is, there's no warning. They just kind of come and you're just like, oh, and your body responds as if that's happening in the moment, because your body doesn't know the difference between yesterday and tomorrow. It only knows what's going on in this moment.
Right.
And it's kind of like I tell people, when you go to a movie that's a scary movie, which I don't like scary movies, but if you did, right, your body responds like it's happening in the moment. Now it's a movie, but you're literally screaming and clenching your fists and hiding, right? It's just a movie, but your body doesn't know that. So, and I'm not saying that a flashback is just a movie, because it's a true, real memory that comes back, but the thing is, one of the things that I was taught was, really to ground myself, put your feet on the floor, keep your eyes open, keep your eyes open, feet on the floor.
It's the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, because it's just, and all of a sudden the screen, the movie just goes, the minute you close your eyes, the movie just goes, and you're like, oh my God. Like, so it's just feet on the floor, wiggle your toes, eyes open. That was then, this is now. That was then, this is now. I am safe now. Even if you have to talk to your body, I am safe. My body is safe. I am present. It is 2021. I am here. There are times when I've literally had to go, this is my husband. I am, it is, 2017, it is 2015, whatever it was, I am safe now. I can handle this. I am okay. That was then, this is now.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest part for me, reminding myself I am a grown woman. I am married. I have children. I am doing a good job. I am not there. That is not here.
Well, and I think the trick, the real like important piece of this is to remember that, like, no matter how old we are, no matter, I have a master's degree, I'm whatever it is. The point is, our bodies don't give a rat's
Right.
about that. Our body is going, none of that matters in this moment. I think you're being attacked. So, and then when we can learn how to calm our bodies, and that's, like I said, feet on the floor, wiggle your toes, the other thing you can do is some kind of like this butterfly tapping, which will actually help like calm your nervous system. It's like bilateral stimulation.
Okay.
Eyes open, I'm having a flashback, I am safe. My body thinks it's, and if you can, part of the things that has really, really helped me is to really learn to like speak to myself. Like I'll say, oh, my body thinks it's, 1980, 1979. I'm safe, and I will literally think in my, I'm almost like seeing myself outside of myself, talking to my body, going, okay, where, my shoulders are really tight. I've noticed over the years that I keep a lot of anxiety and a lot of my body stress, like in my face, like really weird, I'll be like, oh gosh, like, and notice like my jaw feels really tight or whatever it is, but the more you can kind of get back into that, you're going to, all of a sudden you're not dealing with the like thoughts that are, and if, it's just like a different way to kind of change your your brain state without, going, oh, let me breathe or whatever, but it really is helpful to remember that your body doesn't care what the facts are. Your body thinks it's being under attack. So we have to treat it with the respect that it deserves. And so, okay, wow, my heart is racing. Okay, that was then, and compassion goes a long, long way. When I get anxious now, I don't beat myself up. I go way to the compassionate side. This is really hard. Having a flashback hurts. I feel afraid. This is scary. But the more you're going to, and even as a parent, modeling that kind of thing, that's what your kids are going to start being able to do when they're anxious. Oh, I'm feeling really anxious, but I'm safe. I can feel my breath. I can feel my feet on the floor. It's okay. My body is feeling really attacked, but I'm safe, and I'm going to make sure it feels safe. It's okay, body. You think it's all right, but really using compassion, it makes a huge, huge difference, because it doesn't matter. I actually, had a professional I was working with recently who took leave, and she's one of the top trauma people that I know, who's just amazing. And she had to take a leave of absence to work on her own trauma. And, she's in her 50s and doing her thing. And so it is never about, oh, I have, 20 years of experience in treating trauma, and I'm a 55-year-old woman and I travel the world. It's really more about, you asked me earlier about permission. And giving yourself permission. I'm going to take care of my body. My body thinks it's being attacked. No, my body has never felt seen and heard before, because it's reminding me, I think I'm unsafe.
Yes.
So now I have to train it to go, okay, you are safe. And you'll be surprised, like this flashbacks for me, the more I did that, the less they happened. I have to say, it wasn't like an everyday thing that was happening that was, putting me to the floor and crying, because I knew because when I started having flashbacks of being sexually abused growing up, I had already done a lot of work, because my first marriage was abusive, and I had flashbacks like 10 years prior to these flashbacks. So I knew what to do when I had flashbacks. These were even more frightening for me because I was a child, but I had to, I remember that was then, this is now, that was then, this is now, that was then, it's okay, and then like, care for yourself. That's a horrible experience to have had.
It is.
Like, it's time to like go, I'm having a flash, what I'm going to do, I'm going to sit with myself and go, wow, good God, wow, this is a really horrible thing to have to remember, because really what our body is saying is, please see what's happening. And if we just dismiss it or go, oh, whatever, like, it's going to get worse. But the more we know how to manage it, the more soothed our body becomes. It doesn't need to remind us, hey, you never dealt with this. You never dealt with this, and I think that's where you see a lot of anxiety. I think the anxiety MD doctor, I think he's on Instagram, has some great posts about how, anxiety is just unresolved emotions and unresolved memories and things like that. Because our body is going like, I'm not safe. And we have to learn how to tell it that it is safe. But lots of times we don't want to go back to the experiences we had, because we think if we go back there, we're going to find out we're just an unlovable, unworthy piece of crap.
Right.
We're a crazy person. So we go, oh, no. And it's like, when you can really go, well, maybe I'll find out I'm not, but I don't want to live like this anymore.
Right.
Then the freedom that you have is, I mean, I wouldn't trade anything for the fact that today I deal with anxiety very little. I don't have flashbacks anymore. The peace and that I have in my life and my body, mind, and spirit now is worth every minute, that I think some people don't ever get, because they're just too afraid to, take a leap or take a risk.
Yeah. And once you do take the leap, I think the freedom that you find, even with the flashbacks coming now, like, I personally know that the flashbacks are coming on because, like you said, I'm doing the work. So
Right,
like my
right,
body is slowly opening doors. And it's like, you can handle this piece. Let's work here.
right,
Okay,
right.
I'll go over here.
Yeah.
So
And I would say too, Nisha, that, when you're dealing with something like flashbacks, it's really important to have a support system in place for yourself who can really support you, who is, trauma informed and can help you, hold space for you, and see that that is a very difficult experience to have. Flashbacks are not a joke. They're terrible. You are literally reliving the experience.
over and
Yeah, over and over. And so it's really, really important to have the support of a professional who can help you work through that and help you feel seen and safe and can hold some space for you during times like that, and teach you, because the other thing about trauma work is that it's crucial. Connection is crucial to trauma healing. And most of the time we think, oh, no, 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 no. In fact, I was just writing my blog, one of the blogs for December about this yesterday. And we lots of times go, I'm like super independent. I don't need anybody. I put up, I make boundaries, but they're really not boundaries, they're walls. Right. And we can't, right. But we cannot heal in isolation from an event that happened in connection. We have to learn how to have safe connections and you want to talk about taking a leap. Connecting with people is probably one of the hardest things that we could do as trauma survivors, because all we know is nobody's safe. The people who are supposed to keep us safe were the ones who wounded us to the point where we're almost not able to function.
Yeah.
So it's when you can have a connection with a trauma coach or a therapist who's trauma informed, that's actually a big part of the healing.
Yeah. And that much I have learned. That was even a whole process to go through. The very first therapist that I went and talked to went back and told my mother everything, like every bit of our conversation, because I was underage. Well, guess what? If I'm not protected here in the confines of this office, and I can't tell you.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not going to tell you.
She or he should have lost their license.
I don't know. My mom and I talked about it on the way home. Everything that I said to the doctor.
If she felt like your mother could handle it, you know what I mean? And she wasn't the abuser, that's one, you know what I mean? Like, right. And she, you know what I mean? If she felt like you were in danger and you were a minor, I can certainly, but I don't know. I'd have to know more about that. That's
I mean, like, at the end of the day, what it did for me was keep me locked up for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until after my daughter was born when I was in my 30s, and that was when I was 14. So my daughter was born when I was 34. So 20 years. Yeah. And I went to a therapist for postpartum depression and things, like when things started spiraling. And it took me that long to even reach out to somebody.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Well, that's the thing, is that like we become conditioned that nobody is safe.
Right.
And the people that we need and want to trust to care for us are actually the most dangerous ones. So it takes time you want to talk about taking a leap, right?
Yeah.
To really take a leap that maybe there are people out there who aren't, who are safe and who do care.
Yeah.
And who do get it. And I like to think of life in general, I guess, but when it comes to healing from trauma and a lot of things in life, really, it's kind of like dating, right? You go out with this one, and you're like, oh, no. Oh, I like that, but no. And you're like, oh, for God's sake, no, next, and you just kind of go along, but you don't date one person and go, I'm never going to get married. I'm just going to be alone. I mean, my gosh, if we did that, we'd all be like single and alone. Right. And I don't think that's the way God intended it. Right. He made, right. Oh. So I think about that now when it comes to things that I do in my life, like finding a new Bible study or a new group to join. I kind of just go, well, I'm going to try this one. I'm going to try that one, instead of having this attachment to the outcome right away. And it's the same thing when it comes to trauma therapists. I had to go through several therapists and trust myself instead of staying in relationships in therapy that I knew in my gut. I was like, oh, this is a no, right? And trust your gut, really start to learn to go, you are intuitive enough after been through that to be able to trust yourself, to don't waste your time. Now, that doesn't mean you give up because they do one thing you don't like and you go, no, I don't like that, right? I mean, because I've seen that happen too. But when you can say, I'm going to give this another couple of things, but I think I'm noticing this, then you move on, because you don't need to stay stuck in that relationship either.
Right. But I think that is a hard thing to accept, that you can trust yourself. Because if you had a situation when you were younger, it more than likely led to a situation when you should have known better, but you ended up in some other kind of abusive relationship because that's what you expected, that's what you were used to. You stayed there, or this is my experience anyway.
Right, I'm hearing you.
There, and it's like, okay, this is what I'm worth. So, I'm fine. I'll deal with it. Nobody's going to help me out of this. Nobody's safe. And then you find this other relationship and it's like, okay, this could be good, but I'm going to keep one foot in, one foot out, just in case, because I don't trust you, I don't trust me, and I don't trust anybody else.
Right. Well,
So,
I mean, it's kind of like, I think of it sometimes like, going in the ocean or going into a pool. If you've had an experience where you're drowning, you're never going to like jump back into a cannonball into the 12-foot deep end and go, oh, this is great. You're like, I think I'm going to just put my toe in the water. Even, I mean, I love the ocean, but when I go in the ocean, I never run right in. I put my feet in, I go, is it chilly? Oh, that's a little chilly. I back up and a little bit more used to it, but I'm making my body feel safer and safer as I go for the leap of like jumping in. Right. And it's true. Like when you're, and the thing is too, is that it's really important to remember that the brain is pattern seeking, Nisha. And so what that means is we are conditioned for patterns. So if we saw an abusive relationship or an unavailable emotional relationship or a neglectful relationship growing up, that's what we know. That's what we're going to attract, because that's just the way it works. There is really no such thing as I should have known better, because unless somebody teaches you how to handle the discomfort of doing something different so that you can do something different, you're going to continue doing what you do because that's what you learned. So there's no like, oh, I should have known. I mean, man, I slept around. I did all sorts of things, but it was all, and you would think, oh, but you were sexually abused, but you could become hypersexual.
yes.
Or you become hyposexual and you just become like nothing at all.
Right.
So it's like, I had to learn to say to myself, well, no, wait a minute. That doesn't mean I'm just a, slutty, whatever I used to think about myself. It's all that my brain and body knew. So for me, I did what I knew. If somebody teaches you how to like ride a bike or do anything, you start, okay, I get on the bike, I do this. Now, if somebody comes along and goes, oh, no, I don't want you to do it that way, I want you to do it a totally different way, you're going to try that, you're going to fall off the bike. Right. But if you can learn slowly how to get on it differently, but this is just the way and that's why, like my therapist said to me, go out with someone you never would go out with. I mean, and I didn't want to go out with him. Like I said, I was literally like, oh God, when I remember he came to the door and it was like, oh, but I knew how to, I had support in the discomfort. And so I was able to do something different. So I think it's important just to remember the body keeps the score, and we are pattern seeking, beings until we can learn a new pattern.
Right. Okay, so I know that you work with trauma victims and helping them get to the other side. So can you tell everybody where to find you, how to get more information so that they can, start to move in that direction?
Sure. You can find me at my website at GinaRowlkowski.com, and that's GinaRolkowski.com. You can find me on Instagram or Pinterest or what's the other one? LinkedIn. And if you go to my website, you can scroll all the way to the bottom and you can subscribe to my Bite-Sized Breakthroughs weekly newsletter, or you can download my free ebook, 5 Keys to Overcome Abuse and Discover Joy. Or if you so desire, you may schedule your free strategy session and take some time and talk with me and see if we wouldn't be a good fit to work with each other.
That is wonderful. So I will put all of that information in the show notes and everywhere that this video and audio will be placed. But Gina, thank you so much for your conversation, for your tips, for your compassion. and for your courage to share all of that.
Well, thank you for having me. I think it's so important for us to share because we all think we have to like hide behind our shame. And and listen, there's nothing that you're going to tell somebody as a professional that they haven't heard. You know what I mean? We all think, oh God, I'm not going to tell them that. But you know, that's another thing to keep in mind out there for anybody of your listeners. You're not the only one with the story.
Wow. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Nisha.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from Permission to Leap, go to permissiontoleap.com and subscribe to our email list. When you do, we'll send you a digital leap guide. Thanks again, and talk to you next time.